This is T. This is Hank. I was going to call you Henry. And this is Mabel. And the little cat, I can't remember the cat's name. Jazzy. So this is their roadmap to success. Basically, T and Mabel got into a couple fights. Now, basically what had happened is Mabel has come and got in T's face, and 99% of the time, T does not back down. Occasionally, there was a dead rabbit, and there were a couple other incidents where they got in a fight where she didn't back down. And she shouldn't have to always be the one backing down. We have basically, I don't want to say a teenager, but the equivalent of a teenager here in Mabel. And I think she's just going around testing the boundaries and pushing it back on everybody and everything to see how far she can go, because she's trying to ascertain her place in the world. So these dogs didn't have any rules. Well, they weren't allowed to go really in the pantry, but that was about it. And didn't have a lot of structure. Down, excuse me. And so they really didn't have much motivation to listen to their humans. They got petted so much that the petting really doesn't, if you get something too much, it's no longer that valuable. So one of the things I like the guardians to do is start petting with a purpose. So let's just ask the dog to sit or lay down or come or do something before you pet it. Now, if you're petting the dog and it puts its paw on top of you, that's a dominance move. Immediately stop petting. Now, the more that, sit. And then I prefer to pet under the chin like that. I say the word twice. I give it during command stage, and then as soon as I start petting or after I provide a treat, I would say the word sit again. And be careful we don't say sit. We want to say it consistently. So the more that the guardians pet with a purpose, the more the dogs will start to seek out the behaviors that get them those rewards, which are desired behaviors. That's a great way to use positive reinforcement to influence your dog to do the things that you want them to do. I also like to use passive training, which is something I went over with the guardians, which is basically rewarding the dogs for doing things that we like them to do organically. Like, here, come. She came on her own. I didn't ask her to. I didn't entice her to. When she did, I just petted her and I said the word come. So if you get in the habit of doing these two things more than anything else, after a while, every time you pet your dog, it's like a mini dog obedience training session or obedience or a training session. So the dog doesn't think I can tell the human what to do. I have to ask for it and I have to prepay for it. We're also teaching the dog that sitting is a great way to get attention from humans. And then you have guests come over and people are like, wow, your dogs are so well behaved. They just came and sat in front of me. And you say, of course, we hired doggone problems. But no, we're just teaching them how we want them to behave, which is something we do with human babies. We just don't think about doing it with fur babies. Now, I also went over rules and how to enforce them. Having some rules and some limitations can help dogs see and identify humans as authority figures because where they see us doing things. Come. Dogs come. Dogs are all about what they see us do, and they don't see us go to work or work out in the fields or do all the things, so they don't give us credit for doing those things. Every time we correct the dog, enforce a boundary, don't allow it on the furniture or whatever the case may be, then they see us acting like in a leader capacity, and that helps them have more respect for us. Now, if one of the rules is dogs are not allowed on the furniture. Now, what I would prefer to do is I, again, try to use positive reinforcement for everything. So the dog sits on the furniture, what I would do is teach the dog first by maybe having it be the only dog in the room. Maybe we're doing it with Mabel. She gets up here, we take a treat, throw it on the ground. As soon as she gets down on the ground, a second after she licks it up off of the ground, we're going to say the word off or pet her. And then if she don't tell her to get back on the couch, wait. When she does, immediately throw the treat down and say off. So what we're saying, as soon as you get off the couch, you get a treat, and it's assigned with the word off. And so there's a benefit. When they're sitting up here, there is some status and prestige sitting in a higher position. So they're not going to naturally want to get down. So the more that we reward them for doing so, the easier it is for them to do, the more inclined they are to do it, and we're creating more of a vocabulary and putting it in context. Now, whenever I take this rule to the furniture way or suggest that, I always recommend that we provide a dog bed. So I showed the guardians how to use the dog bed. Remember, the first one is we throw it on the dog bed. When the dog licks it up, we're going to say Hilton. And then the second way was we're going to leave one there and just observe. Don't point it out. Wait for the dog to find it. When it does, and we say Hilton. And then the third way is we bring the dog over and put it in a sit or an LAY and put the treat in its mouth and say Hilton. Now, this is to entice the dog to go there. After a while, Mabel was going over there on her own. So if she goes over there, I don't have a treat, I can just say Hilton. Or if I have a treat, I can get up and go over, toss it, or I can get up and go over there. But emphasize this for the first couple of days. It shouldn't take long before the dogs use the dog bed on their own. Again, get a dog bed that is like foam on the inside, no pattern, a light color, so if you leave a treat there, they can see it instantly. And then you can also unzip it and wash it if the dogs track in mud from outside, and you can clean it up. I would get a big one, big enough for all. You're going to get an XL to get all three of your dogs on there. But one of the things I enjoy is watching my dogs sleep together, and I think that they already are buddies. But the more time they spend together, the more beneficial that's going to be, creating positive associations. Let me see, what else we wanted to go, other rules we went over. When the humans are eating here, the dog should not be allowed within 7 feet of the humans who are eating. We're going to use the escalating consequences to enforce these rules. If you forget how to do the escalating consequences, message me, I can send you a link to them. But remember, always start out with the hiss and then go up from there. And if, let's say that you're eating here and you're eating crackers and you can't hiss, your lovely lady can hiss for you and also can do the other consequences and move the dog away. Now, if you're going to eat a real meal here and you know the dog's really going to be a pain, practice it. Do a practice round. Get a piece of roast beef, microwave it, sit down here, cut it up into little pieces, and when the dog starts coming over for it, stand up and use the escalating consequences and move around and establish that invisible boundary. And then once they all lay down, and like they did when we were doing the feeding ritual, then you can go put that back up and get your real meal, sit down, and now you've already taught them the behavior you want them to have. And that's going to be really important because when we have a baby that's going to be arriving in about a month, we need the dogs to start understand the concept of boundaries and limitations. Otherwise, when the baby comes, they're going to get real right up in our business, and we're going to need to be putting our attention and our focus on the baby, not on the dog. So training them to do this stuff ahead of time is very important. Another rule would be we can actually pan over here and look at T sitting at the door. One of the rules is the dog has to sit before we let it in or out of the door. So as soon as the dog sits, then we open the door and let it out. Now, if I go to the door and say sit, and, you can film me. If the dog doesn't go, if you go to the door and say sit and tell them don't ask, say it one time only and say it like an order. Sit. If they don't sit, then walk away. If they should sit within 2 or 3 seconds. Then walk away, sit down, grab a newspaper, magazine, do something else. Wait 1 minute, then go back and tell them to sit again. If they don't sit, this time I'll walk away for 2 minutes. Then for 4 minutes, then for 8 minutes. So each time they don't comply, you wait twice as long before you give them another opportunity. After a while, they'll go sit at the door as their way of asking to go outside. Again, manding. This is a really important part of a lot of what I do is just teaching dogs, again, that they can't jump up on a human, they can't nudge them, they have to sit. Let me see, other rules when we're cooking in the kitchen, the dogs are not allowed to be in the kitchen. Now, I just spotted the guardian was trying to tell Mabel to leave the kitchen, and she was saying out. Well, we have to put it in context. So a great way to do that would be go and just have one of the dogs here, the other 2 dogs are maybe in the bedroom or outside, and then we go in there, the dog goes in with us, we take a high-value training treat, we toss it outside, and as soon as the dog goes out of the room, we say out. And then let the dog come back in and do the same thing. So now we're creating a vocabulary, and out means to leave. Because most dogs look at like, why are you pushing me away? What did I do wrong? They look at that as being removed from you as a punishment or a negative. Well, now you can create a positive. I'm just asking you to give me some space. And the dog's happy to do it because they get a reward at the end. Let me see. We have a baby coming, and we have a room that's going to be basically the baby room. So I'd like to prepare for the baby. So I'd like the mom to start grabbing out a lotion a day and putting it on her forearm. The butt paste, the baby, whatever. I've never had babies, so I don't know. But there's a whole bunch of things. They have a strong aroma, and smell is everything to dogs. So each day we put on one of these aromas, and the dog gets used to it and smells it and smells it. And then when the baby comes, it's not all of a sudden there's all these new jackpot of smells, and I'm drawn to the baby. We also want to practice being in that room with the door open. So we have a little recliner in there. I would have mom go in there and spend some time reading, doing a little work, checking some emails. Go in there, open the door. As soon as you open the door, turn so you're facing the door and take 1 step backwards, pause. If the dogs stay in place, take another step backwards, pause. As soon as they cross that threshold, you rush at them using the 3rd consequence until they get out of the room. You're going to have to go back and forth several times, but again, we want to practice this. I'd like the guardians to practice this at least 4 or 5 times a day, every day until the baby comes. So that when mom goes in the baby in the nursery, the dogs are practiced at not going in there with the door wide open. And I would also not let the dogs in the nursery under any capacity for right now. Later on, we can let them in, but there's going to be poopy diapers and smells and sights and sounds and all sorts of stuff that's going to attract the dogs in there. So the more we help them practice that, the easier that behavior is going to be for them to have when the baby arrives. I'd like the guardian to get a towel. They already knew about this from the hospital. And what I do is I usually bring the towel home and lay it on the floor. Let the dogs interact with it one at a time. Have the other 2 dogs in the other room. And then basically, don't let them do anything aggressive with it. But once the dog moves away from it, take one of the tricky trainers out, toss it on there. When they come and get it, you could say the baby's name if you know what it is and create a positive association with that. But they're going to smell a little bit of the baby as they get the treat, and they like the treat, so it creates more of a positive association. We can also do things to put the dog in a position to succeed when the baby comes home. So I'd like to have the guardians either doggy daycare is great if you can take them there, but take them to doggy daycare or play fetch or a lot of exercise before the baby comes home. Deplete their energy And so when the baby comes home, you guys are going to be focused on other things. So I would highly recommend enlisting a dog walker that can practice doing this for the week that the baby's coming home, so that they're used to and comfortable with the dog walker. Make sure the dog walker takes them a really long walk, probably separately or however you want to do it, and time it out so that about a half an hour after the last dog gets back home, that's when you guys come home with the baby, half an hour or an hour. So we deplete that excess energy, so it makes it easier for the dog to have a better experience with the baby for the first time. We don't want the dog to be protecting the baby. The dog's job is to protect the baby, then it also should correct the baby, and we don't want that to happen at all. Let me see, what else? Fetch. If you can teach your dog to fetch, that's a great way to exercise. We're kind of in the country, it's going to be winter, and we sometimes don't want to walk our dogs. So I talked about using a doggy backpack for her because she's such a strong dog, and she's by far the youngest one. If you get a dog backpack, they should be probably about $60 to $80, somewhere in that range. Don't get one that's too cheap, it'll fall apart. You don't need the one for $200. But put like a couple bags of sand or a couple 1 liter bottles of water in it. Now when you put that on the dog, it creates more of a job for the dog, and also makes your walk more efficient. Now you wouldn't put a dog backpack on when you're playing fetch, but if we can teach the dogs how to play fetch, that goes a long ways. And that's, you take the dog outside and practice playing fetch for 15 minutes. You count it up, maybe that's 53 fetches. Get a chucker as well, because you guys are in the country, you have a lot more room. So if you can chuck that, you're one of those long chuckers, you'll be able to chuck it a lot farther than you can throw it, and you don't have to touch it when it's wet. And now that'll be a better way to exercise the dogs. Remember, only exercise them with an empty stomach. They need to have at least an hour after eating before we do that. We went through structured feeding, and the dogs did really well. Remember when you use the kennel to kind of block the passageway, we have a big entry point. And each time we do it, we're going to move the kennel maybe just 1 inch further away. So the entry point's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually it'll be completely big or open, and the dogs don't understand that they can't come in, and they have to restrain themselves. That's going to help them develop great self-restraint, which is something I don't think they have much of, and that's probably related to some of these problems. But the more that we can flip the leader-follower dynamic by having the dogs think, I have to ask the humans for attention, I have to pay for it by sitting, I have to sit at the door, I'm not allowed to be near them when they're eating, I have to practice not going in the room. All these things are set the dog up for success. When the baby comes, they know kind of how we want them to behave. Let me see, and the furniture thing is really going to be helpful because mom's going to be up here with and dad with the baby, and we need a buffer, and this helps the dog have the dog bed to go to and understand and get comfortable with this, so that when the baby comes, they don't look at this as a negative because the baby came and suddenly now I'm demoted, because the higher the dog sits, the more rank they have. We want at least a month or two before the baby comes before that's actually the case. But exercising them, again, especially early in the morning, is going to help make them easier to work with and to deal with. Now, whenever a focus exercise above, I like the Guardians, there's instructions in that video on how to do that, how many times, but you want to get to the point where all 3 dogs will focus on you as soon as you say the name, and be able to keep that treat going for 20 seconds with the dog focused on you. We also added a little addition to the focus exercise that I've never done before, which is to teach the dog to look at you and recognize their name in a positive way. When you have that, then you could say, Mabel, come, Mabel, down, Mabel, out. But that out command is really helpful, so make sure you practice that one. And I wouldn't do it just in the kitchen, I would do it in the dog room as well. The only difference is you're not going to let them, I guess the dog room, we just not let them go, or not the dog room, the baby's room, what do we call that? Nursery. So we're not going to allow them in there at all. But like, practice doing it for the kitchen, practice doing it for the bedroom, practice doing it from the couch. So for the couch, it would be off, that would be out, so to leave the room. But again, we're creating a vocabulary. Remember to only use 1 vocabulary word per command. Like a lot of my clients, they're saying come here, over here, dog's name, whistle, tap my thigh. Now the dog has to listen for a lot of words. So what I usually recommend is we say vocabulary. So if I say come here, somebody says vocabulary, I say, oh, come. And we're going to consolidate it down, make it easier for the dogs to listen. Also, we're going to use the word paycheck. So if we come in the room and we see somebody's petting the dog where it's standing, we suspect they may have forgotten to ask the dog to do something. Paycheck, that person stops petting. Then we say sit. As soon as the dog sits, we pet her on the chin, say the word sit. Then we say, I actually asked the dog to sit before he came in, you just didn't hear it. Remember, always try to pet under the chin whenever possible, especially when rewarding desired behaviors. That would have been a good pet for this. My cameraman is holding the camera, but there we go, a little foot pet. The more that we reward them for those desired actions and behaviors, the more they're going to be willing to do that. And again, we'll just forget to do it ourselves. So that paycheck just is a reminder. Let me see, and I also say reward. So if I say reward to somebody, you look at the dog, whatever the dog's doing, you pet it immediately, and it's just assume that if it's standing, it just came to you. your partner is probably telling you you missed an opportunity to reward a desired behavior. So paycheck just means, oh, crap, down, sit, whatever it is. Now, Mabel also likes to chase lights and shadows. I showed the guardians how they can desensitize her for that, and I would do that at the time, when we have, it's a beautiful sunset. But when we have sunset, the sun is going down, it's hitting different things in the room and putting shadows. So if we kind of put it there and make it, I put a tripod up with my phone, it was hitting it, and the dog went after it, but at first it was just really into it, then kind of less into it and more relaxed. After a while, they just will be relaxed about it and they don't respond to those sort of things. Am I forgetting anything? I'm probably forgetting a lot of things, but I try to encapsulate it as much as I can in these.
Like I have.
If you forgot, I forgot.
Okay. So if there is something that I forgot to go over, make sure you let me know. Call me or text me, and don't wait. The sooner you call or text me, usually the faster I can help. We're kind of a ways away from my home base in Omaha, and I do not drive into Iowa when there's snow on the ground because I got stuck twice, and it's been all day ordeal. So once the snow hits the ground, I do not do that. So call me or text me. Usually I can help with a quick phone call, or we can do a little video if we need to. I would just continue. The other thing for Mabel, I think she was kenneled for too long. Generally speaking, you don't want your dog to be kenneled for more than 4 hours at a stretch. So we'd like to see if we can incorporate a dog walker, or somebody can come by, let her out, play. And if she's learned how to play fetch, I cannot underscore how important, how easy, bigger improvement fetch will make, especially for the first year of having a baby here. But if we can have somebody come by, let the dog out, play a little fetch, and spend about a half an hour, and then put her back in there. At least she's not in there for an 8 or 9 hour period, which is going to be detrimental. Now, she is an anxious dog. The guardians were petting her at times where she was nervous, and I think that enhanced it. Now they know how to pet her with a purpose. But something else that we can do is also build up her self-esteem and confidence, and we can do that by teaching her new tricks and commands. So one of the things I would do, because once the baby comes, we're not going to have a lot of time for the first year. So what I would recommend you guys do is each week, one of the guardians is going to switch off and go to YouTube, find an easy dog trick. Especially looking for tricks that give the dog direction. But so let's say the husband is teaching the dog how to balance a treat on its nose. Once he's taught the dogs how to do that, then he's going to teach his wife the command, and then all week long we're going to practice that one command with the dogs. Then next week she's going to take over and she's going to teach something. So by the time the baby comes, there's like 4 or 5 new commands. Combine that with an out and a down, and an off. And some other things. We're creating more of a vocabulary that's going to make it easier for us to redirect the dogs later on. Now, I have some other baby tips, but they're not popping in my brain right now. If you go to doggoneproblems.com, if you click on the behavior column, I write a column for the World Herald each Wednesday, and I've had some where it talks about baby. So I would just open that page, do a search for baby. It'll be in the title, and then click on that. I think it's like 7 tips, 10 tips to help a baby introduce your dog to the baby successfully the first time. Excuse me. All right, Mabel, come. Use this hand motion and then put her in a sit by going over her head. Sit. Remember, everything you do trains your dog. Only sometimes you mean it.